Good evening and welcome to this week's episode of Coach's Corner. My name is Dwayne Dwyer, I go by the Mindset Coach,
My name is the Uncle Junior, and I go by the Consistency Coach.
and we are the coaches for Coach's Corner. As always, like I tend to say, if you're just here and you're just going to soak up the information and then go back and do the exact same things you used to do prior to, this may not necessarily be the place for you. But if you're here and you're looking for change, you're looking to break outside of your comfort zone, you're looking to be impactful in the lives of others, then you are in the right place at the right time. I think you were destined to sit there and listen to the voices of myself, the mindset coach, and my good friend, the consistency coach, as we go through this extraordinary conversation that we have for you this week. So that being said, to my good friend, the consistency coach, how are you doing this evening, brother?
Man, I'm doing good, man. As you can tell by the sound of my voice, I've been eating a whole bunch of pollen over the last couple of days. You know what I'm saying? So, but overall, I feel well. You
Yeah,
know, it just comes with this time of year.
yeah,
Call yellow. Everything's yellow around here. It's blowing in the wind. So, but all is well.
yeah, yeah. I'm with you. I can definitely relate. I go outside, and my truck is black, but every time I go outside, it has a haze of green on top of it. So it's like,
Yeah,
okay, I get it. And
yeah.
so you got to constantly spray it off because apparently pollen is bad for paint and all kind of stuff like that. Fortunately, I take medication for allergies. It's
Mm-hmm.
always been a thing for me. So allergy season don't bother me as much as it used to.
Mm-hmm.
There's those, just little slight reactions, not much though, but I get it. We're all dealing with it right now.
Yeah.
It's just that time of year, man. All is well.
Yeah, you just want to ride and roll the windows down because it's nice out, but at the same time, you just like, man, is it really worth it?
Yeah,
Might
don't
well
don't
just
do
cut
that.
the AC on.
Yeah,
Yeah.
don't do that. Don't do that.
And
It
trying
ain't
to
like
get
it
it
used
off
to be.
the car. Ooh,
Yeah, it ain't like it
yeah.
used to be. Yeah, man. So that said, man, again, it's always an honor to be here and share in conversation with you.
Hmm.
And equally, it is an honor to share in conversation with the livest chat and social media. So again,
Yay.
we appreciate you guys for being here. Again, you are valuable to this channel. You're valuable to this show. And you guys always seem to just say just the right thing at the right time. So we invite you to do so. Share your thoughts, share your perspective, ask questions. Make sure you hit that like button. And if you haven't done so already, share, and share again. So that said, I mean, bro, unless you got anything else, I mean, we can just kind of get after it.
No, I just want to say good evening to the chat as well. Hope everybody is having a wonderful Tuesday. And I guess that's it.
Let's see. What if the same protocols that saved astronauts from imploding into the icy void of space could rescue your next team meeting, family holiday, or group project from total meltdown? In the 1960s, NASA's Mercury 7 faced a problem far deadlier than rocket fuel or cosmic radiation. It was human friction. Crammed in tiny capsules with no escape, they risked mission failure, not from technical glitches, but from unchecked squabbles. Their solution? A radical system called structured venting, turning raw tension into rocket fuel for progress. And today we're stealing it to hack conflict here on Earth. Most of us treat conflict like a live grenade: duck, cover, and pray. The Mercury 7 framework treats it like mission data. You don't diffuse it, you decode it. Through timed events, depersonalized critiques, and ruthless focus on fixes, they turned fights into flight plans. So this isn't about playing nice, it's about out engineering drama. Whether you're navigating office politics, marriage spats, or group chat wars, the Mercury 7 framework rewires how we tend to fight. So if you want to get to the point of tackling conflict with confidence, make sure that you stay tuned. Listen all the way through because this show is going to be packed with relevant, actionable data that you can use at any given point in your life. So if you're joining us during the replay, make sure that you continue, hit play, pause, right, play, pause, right, because I guarantee you will thoroughly enjoy this conversation. I kind of want to just kind of throw something out. It's kind of like it's not really rhetorical. It's just kind of like imaginable. Like, could you imagine being in outer space in a small enclosed box with like two, three dudes trying to operate day in and day out and day in and day out and just pretty much going through the things that you're supposed to do. You're sleeping together, maybe in different areas, things of that nature. Like, could you imagine the type of conflicts that they had to endure?
Yeah, man, because it's like there's 4 different personalities,
Hmm.
3 or 4 different personalities, there's 3 or 4 different ways of doing things, there's 3 or 4 different egos, there are 3 or 4 different everything, there's 3 or 4 different individuals, so, um, at some point when it comes to leadership, or 3 to 4 people, someone has to take the lead on something sometimes, but
Yeah,
how do we decide who takes the lead, you know? Um, it seems like the best thing would be to figure out who's the expert in that area, and then that person take the lead, but who's to say which person is the expert in whatever area? So I could definitely see how a bunch of, 3 or 4 people, working together to solve problems, in the span of a certain amount of time in outer space can have a lot of conflict.
yeah,
Um
yeah. I see. I get what you're saying. I guess from my viewpoint, it just looks a little different because
Mhm,
remember, astronauts are they're airmen. They're
mhm,
they're in the military, so I don't think it'll be an issue with authority.
mhm,
It would definitely be an issue with frustration, an
mm,
issue with like just seeing the same people over and over and over again. Like when I was
mm,
like, I remember a long time ago, somebody taught me two adults of the same sex can't occupy the same roof for a prolonged period of time.
mm,
And if you pay attention, that actually is a true statement. Like if you have
mhm,
two full grown men in a house living together over a period of time, sometime, and I don't know what it is, something is going to happen to where there's going to be some conflict in that house. And the same thing applies for two women. Generally, that's why when the daughter gets a certain age, of course, becoming an adult, either she leaves or at some point she is being told that she got to go because like you're butting heads and that
mhm,
just ain't gonna work. So that's just kind of like how I see it. I don't think
yeah,
because of a military mindset, I don't think it'll be an authority struggle.
mhm.
In my mind, it just seems like there'd just be conflict, natural conflict, just because of proximity. Um,
Yeah, I see that, and as I was talking and I was thinking about the other side of that, and what came to mind was uh, a special forces team,
mm,
whereas there's, a whole bunch of different individuals who are experts at their profession, and then I also was thinking about being in the military, and when we were deployed, and we have being them choose,
mhm.
and we have roommates, and then, no matter what, it seems like after 12, 13 months, you get tired of seeing the same folks, after a while, you just like, dang, man, I'm just tired of seeing coach. I mean, he cool and everything, but
Yeah,
darn, man, like every day for nonstop, and it's just sometimes, you just learn more about each other. You get annoyed sometimes. So
yeah. You'd be like, "Why are you breathing so hard?" No, I'm joking. Um, um,
but that's true sometimes.
exactly. And like you just looking for something to complain about or fuss about.
Hmm.
So I think because we're talking astronauts, because they deal with data processing, synthesizing data, they deal with trying to reverse engineer and find problem sets. One of the things that they became really good at is treating conflict as data. And I think that's important. And if we start thinking about it, like you are a walking sensory node, you're a walking piece of intelligence. Like that's what your senses are, right? When you go back to the senses that they taught everybody in elementary school, like they are sensing the environment. So the first question I want to ask is like, how does analyzing recurring arguments for patterns rather than assigning blame improve resolution outcomes?
Because what this does is when you analyze reoccurring argument, that gives you, like you were saying, treating conflict as data. That gives you data that you can go back and you can assess and you can figure out how to move better or how to improve your resolution outcomes going forward. All right. So say for instance, me and Shell have an argument about this, and then we have an argument about that. We have 5 arguments, right? So if we have assessed all of these different arguments, maybe we can go back and say, hey, look, we've had 5 arguments about this same thing. what is going on in our relationship that keeps triggering these arguments? We can go back, we can assess it. Okay, well, were you in a certain mood? What time of day was it? You know, you can get as deep and as detailed as you want to get, especially if you are assessing and actually writing down or tracking the assessment that you're doing, whether it's individually or whether it's collectively together. But I think what you can do as you go and you look back and you analyze those five different arguments, or we go back and analyze those five different arguments, we should at some point come up with, say, hey, look, you know what, babe, this is probably the main cause of this. You know what I mean? So how do we come up with a plan to where we don't get to this point, to whereas we don't eventually have the argument or the altercation or whatever like that going forward. So that's kind of how I look at it.
Yeah, I remember when we were in Iraq, we did pattern analysis. And pattern analysis allowed us to understand who did what at one particular point in time. What are their norms? Like, who do they talk to? You know, where did they spend the majority of the times with? And being able to look at those things, looking at the time they woke up in the morning, the time they, left the house, when they left the house, who did they go to, who was at that location, and things of that nature. And so it kind of helped us to understand the normal tendencies of the person. And when we got to the point of understanding the normal tendencies of the person, that kind of helped us understand the actions that we need to take as it pertained to certain patterns, when we wanted to do a certain thing, how we wanted to do a certain thing, and who it would include. I love the way that you articulated this as it pertains to relationships, because I think at the end of the day, this can work, but if both parties aren't on board with it, it won't work. Right? You can't by yourself say that I'm analyzing patterns of my spouse, but yet my spouse is not a part of the process. Like, we need to identify as a team, because that's who we are. We need to identify what are some of the things that we're looking for when we're doing pattern analysis. That also works definitely when we're talking about work in team settings. That definitely works when we're talking in community settings. Like, when we look at things that are handicapping us, that are setting us back, then let's look at some of the patterns that we actually have, some of the patterns that we have settled down in, and then analyze not only what those patterns look like, when they tend to happen, what are some of the triggers that cause it to happen, and like what are some of the things that we can do to get to a not only ideal but sustainable outcome. I think that's the other part. I think sometimes people want an ideal outcome, but that ideal outcome isn't sustainable. So sustainability has to be a thing as well.
You mentioned two things. You mentioned work, and then you mentioned like two people working together, and or having like both people have to be willing to work together. And I think, sometimes that can be challenging when you're in the work environment. Excuse me, because not everybody is of the same mindset that they're necessarily trying to problem solve and come to a better outcome. Some people are egotistical, or some people just may want their way, or some people may just be ignorant to the fact that there is a better way of there is a better way. Um, and that's what's challenging sometimes.
Can I tell you the truth?
Yeah.
It's easier to do it at work than it is at home,
Mm, expound on that, please.
because everybody at work know why they go to work. Now,
Mhm.
some of them primary reason might be the job. I mean, I'm sorry, it might be the paycheck. But at the end of the day, the team understands and recognizes that they're there for the team. And ideally, the team focuses on the vision and the core competency, not core competency, core values of the organization. The manager has a responsibility to ensure that they do as well. Also, the team tend to go through the stages of team development. So during the stages of team development, this is going to happen, storming. When they get the storming in the stages of team development, the manager's responsibility is to point them back to the reason why they're the team. Only when they cannot work out their own issues themselves. For a person who tends to focus more on self than what the team is put together for, that person is going to eventually end up looking for another job. Either they're going to quit or they're going to get fired. So it's easier to do it at work than it is at home because some I actually have the let's just say it like this. I actually have the letter of the law at my disposal. So either you get on board with the team so that we can work for the betterment of the company or go find another job. And
Mm-hmm.
if you don't want to go find another job, that's fine. I'll help you go find another job by relieving you of this one. So that's why I say it's easier to do it at work than it is at home because a lot of times, especially hate to say it this way, especially in the current modern day mindset, both parties don't have the same viewpoint when it comes down to relationship.
Mm.
And because both parties don't have the same viewpoint, you don't have the letter of the law at your disposal in that relationship. You only have the level of patience that both of you have to work through said problem. And if you can't work through said problem, then what's the result?
Get another job.
That's why I keep saying I say
Yeah.
it all the time, but I know a lot of people don't like to hear it that way. There
Yeah.
is really no difference between the two. It's
Yeah.
only different because we view it differently. But once the job actually gets right, and I say it that way, once the job gets right, it looks like the perfect relationship.
Yeah.
Once the relationship gets right, it looks like the perfect job. We just don't reduce it down to the job. But when you look at a relationship to where everybody in that relationship is working toward a common goal because we are one, you're operating like a fine tuned machine, same as they do with a job.
Don't that ain't and I know in the military and in relationships at some point you've been at that point. And I can definitely say that I have in personal life, relationships, um, because it's the whole ebbs and flows things.
Sure.
When your unit is working and everybody kicking, like it's a great thing when everybody is pretty much dialed in, and then the one or two people that get out of line, they either out or they whip them back into
Yep.
mindset. Sports is a that's why I tell people like sports is a great way to see that. When you have one band, one sound. When
Hmm.
you everybody is collectively together to all 11 people on the offense need to do what they need to do.
Hmm.
All 11 people on defense need to do what they need to do. And when everybody does it, it's great. And especially in the house,
Yeah.
oh my goodness.
Yeah. Absolutely. Everybody can't be the quarterback of the team.
Everybody can quarterback the house.
Yeah. I mean, I didn't want to say it, but you did.
Hey,
Um, and I think when we look at it from that perspective, that means that we have to set the conditions for this mindset to exist. And in setting the conditions for this mindset to exist, that makes conflict resolution more of a thing of a system under more of a systemic nature than it is a reactive nature. So, what systemic changes would organizations need to adapt or adopt to institutionalize data-driven conflict resolution frameworks?
um, I think, and I'm not big on rewards, but I am at the same time. Um, I like having programs in organizations that promote personal growth. Um, I think we do a lot of things together. We do a lot of team building, and it's mandatory, and everybody has to go. And some people want to go, and some people don't want to go. But I think that sometimes when you can start developing leaders in your organization through um, somehow recognizing or somehow showing, giving people, showing them how important personal growth is, and then rewarding it somehow. All right. So when you go to blah 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 blah, seminar, or you take this many courses in self development, or you read this many books, or blah blah blah. We have a reading club. I don't know, but just have some certain programs in there that promote personal development. And I think that what you'll find is that you'll have individuals being better people, um not saying that they're not already good people, but they're constantly working on growth and trying to be better. So because they're better for themselves, they're a better person for the organization. And I think that those things can be other people can gravitate toward those, or the other people can start adopting those, especially if they're rewarded in somehow to make people, maybe buy into it. But um I like collectively doing things too, but I see a lot of that, and also see a lot of people having to go to those things and they really don't want to be there. So they're just there, and they're checked out. Oh well, we gotta do this training. I really don't want to be here. So I think somehow rewarding, um, the individual growth, could be a good thing.
Yeah, I would say in conjunction with that, because I'm gonna pull some things from what you said to add to what I'm saying. We need to have a common operating picture. I believe that everything is operations in an organization, whether we're talking about getting market analysis, whether we're talking about advertising, whether we're talking about, um, you know, whether we're talking about employee turnover. Everything is operations. So we need to have a common operating picture when it comes down to a conflict resolution framework. Now, that requires that I teach the conflict resolution framework to my employees so that they have an understanding of it. So
Mm-hmm.
when you talk about, um, like team, what do you call them? You
Like
just said
team
it.
buildings.
Team building. There you go. I couldn't get it out.
Mm-hmm.
When you talk about team building, like I think we do team building wrong.
I do
I think,
think so too. I think so too.
yeah, I think people want to do team building to have fun.
Mm-hmm.
There's nothing wrong with having fun, as long as fun is not the primary thing. Make
Yeah.
learning the primary thing and learn to make learning fun. So if we
Mm-hmm.
have a conflict resolution framework and we teach it, we can do team building exercises to where we practice the conflict resolution framework. So now what we're doing is we're helping you mitigate the conflict that will happen before it happens because everybody knows the conflict resolution framework. That's the thing. But here's the issue. I don't think a lot of people know how to teach and make teaching fun. So they struggle with teaching something and making it fun and, not just for themselves, but for everybody else. So it has to be somebody who not only knows the framework, the ins and out workings of the framework, but somebody who can teach it to such a degree that not only they understand it, but they're having fun by understanding it. And then at the end of the day, give some type of reward or something at the end of the day for the best, you know, the most, I don't know, you make it up. Like,
Yeah.
the biggest learning curve or the most
Yeah.
engaged or something of that nature. So now team development, even though it is still work, it's fun and everybody leave learning something. We got this new framework in the mindset of all of our employees, and we know it's going to be employed because when conflict happens, we're like, well, let's see the frame. Where are we at in the framework? And now everybody can come up and say, okay, this is where it was. This is what happened. These are the things that we use to mitigate it. This is where we are now.
Here's what I see as part of the challenging part of this, especially in the school system. And that is you can come in and you can adopt something in your school, but it's only being adopted in your school. And then if the head person or the principal moves, then someone else come in and they have a different framework. And then next thing you know, the county will purchase a framework for this, and then they will send that down. So in the span of 5 or 6 years, you've had two or three different types of frameworks, and then, you have a framework at this school, and then you have someone facilitating it from that organization where they bought it, where they purchased it from, and then they're there in the beginning, but there's no one there continuously. You know what I mean? They go back to California, after they've collected their millions of dollars or what, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And they're gone, but then now there's no one here to help implement it and continue on the process, and then you switch out 3 or 4 teachers every year for the next few years, and it gets lost, and next thing you know, you're on to something different. So I think that it's a lot easier sometimes. Well, I don't know, I don't want to say that. I think it would be easier if they kept if there was a structure that was set from the top down, because in the military our structure is set from the top down, so it don't matter who come in and out. I can, you pull you out one day and throw me in the same thing, and I'm going to continue on. But it's not like that in a lot of times in the civilian world. So a lot of times it's individualized, at least in the school system, from what I've been seeing.
Yeah, that's why it has to be implemented at the district level.
Yep.
If it's implemented at the district level and all of these teacher work days or whatever other days they have off doing something other, right?
Yep.
Then that's what you're doing. You're teaching this to teachers. Well,
Yeah.
when you teach it to teachers, you got less conflict amongst teachers. And
Yep.
then maybe there's a part of our curriculum that we can actually include to teach children conflict resolution at a young age. That would be an amazing thing, would it not?
Man, I teach conflict resolution to kindergartners, bro, for the first 7 years I was a counselor.
I was about to
That's
say,
why
'cause
I'm
you
just
a
like,
counselor.
yeah, I'm just like, bro, like how we still have adults who can't do it. So I'm just like, bro, y'all was not paying attention in my class when Mr. Martin came through and we had a whole week's worth of conflict resolution, bullying, how to get along with your peers, how to get along with teachers, how to get along with your parents. Like we have all of um these classes all the time.
Yeah.
So it's not like they're getting it. I think what's happening is it's not always being reinforced. Um
And I think so that I think that's why, right? Because they
Mhm.
don't understand conflict.
Yeah.
And that's where we struggle in most cases. We do not understand conflict. And so moving forward, because I want to kind of bring that to the table,
Mhm.
this is what we have to do. We have to help people to understand structured emotional reset techniques because there is this thing, this little itty bitty thing that sits in the center of your brain. And that's the thing that's responsible for the way that you respond to activity. Now, I want to kind of put this image up here first. I think I have it. Yep, there it is.
Mm.
So that image kind of helps you to understand it better. Notice where the amygdala sits as it pertains to the data that comes in through your eyes and is being processed through the visual thalamus and then going to your visual cortex because it must go through the amygdala before it goes down into the being, the person itself, and that's where the physiological response come from. And so, in most cases, what we don't necessarily know is that the amygdala is an almond-shaped cluster of neurons located deep in the temporal lobe of the brain, and it plays a central role in processing emotions, particularly fear and threat detection and survival responses. But when we start talking about amygdala activation, it literally refers to its heightened activity during emotionally charged situations, especially those perceived as dangerous, stressful, or uncertain. And so there are like five key points that we have to keep in mind when it comes down to amygdala activation. Number one is a fear threat response. And in the midst of a fear threat response, the amygdala acts as the brain's alarm system, triggering what we call fight or flight. And then next, number two, we have what is called emotional memory, which to me I think is one of the biggest ones we have to talk about because when it comes down to emotional memory, I think that's where a lot of our past unresolved hurts find its way into the present day life, but it links memories to emotions. So recalling a traumatic event reactivates the amygdala's fear response. It's like putting something on the shelf because you had not thought about it in years, and then when you go back, it brings back all of those memories and the emotions that you felt back then are now experienced now. Number three is stress and conflict, right? So during arguments and high stressed interactions, the amygdala activation impairs logical thinking and escalates reaction, yelling, shouting, things of that nature. Number four is overriding logic, which is key. When activated, the amygdala hijacks the prefrontal cortex, which is ultimately responsible for reasoning and impulse control, leading to impulsive decisions. And last but not least is body connection. And literally, it activates physical symptoms like rapid heartbeat, sweating, and tense muscles during conflict. That, my friend, based upon what you just said, is the reason why they struggle and still have a hard time when it comes down to like dealing with conflict in our adult age. So even in the midst of that, I want to kind of inject this question because, again, all of these things, these 5 points that I talked about under amygdala response, is ultimately where a person is in the midst of that moment. So, why do controlled breathing patterns, kind of like a 4-4-6 sequence, reduce amygdala activation during heated moments?
Man, I don't know, but I know it works, right? I know that I don't know what, and what I say when I say I don't know is mean I don't know the biology terms and the way to break it down biologically. I can speak from personal experience. I can speak from seeing it, from witnessing it, from seeing it in students. When I do, 5 finger breathing or birthday breathing, and it's kind of similar to the 4-4-6, but I just may make it fun or put it in a package that may be easier for them to absorb versus saying, hey, 4-4-6. We may do, 5 fingers where you just may breathe in and then breathe out and then breathe in and then breathe out. You know what I mean? Or say, hey, you're at a birthday party and you got to blow out the candle. So you got to take a really deep breath, right? And then blow it out. And I was like, hey, you missed one, do it again. You know what I mean? Next thing you know, we got 3 or 4 breaths in, and now the child is smiling and stuff like that. And, and they're calmed down a little bit. So I really don't know the biological thing behind it. But like I said, even, and now I'm go to my own self. You know what I mean? Some of y'all didn't been in relationships and stuff like this. And you was like, man, right? Everybody done been there. You hitting your hands or doing whatever it is you're doing. And so you can relate, most of us can relate to, some sort of breathing or some sort of controlled breathing pattern when we are upset or when we are at a certain level of emotion. So like I said, man, I don't really know how to break it down the biological point. So I kind of went with some examples of where I've experienced it in my life.
For those who don't know the 4-4-6 technique, it's inhale for 4 seconds. Um, I'm going to make sure I got it right. Inhale for 4 seconds, count to 4 seconds, exhale for six. Wait 2 seconds, repeat the process again. This legitimately slows you down. That's the whole concept behind it. When you have that rapid heartbeat, you're sweating, you like amped up, you ready to like you can't wait that they stop talking because I'm ready to respond. Don't do it because chances are you ain't heard a word they said. So breathe in for 4 seconds, hold it for 4 seconds, exhale for 6 seconds, wait 2 seconds, repeat the process. If you do this, I promise you, your heart rate will slow down. You'll probably stop sweating. You'll probably start cooling off and all that other great stuff. And then you'll respond in a different manner. You may have to ask them to repeat what they said before because you ain't heard nothing. Like you didn't process one thing they said because you was already on 10 and you was just waiting on them to stop because you going to give it to them. So that's what this does. If you get to the point where you can do this, I almost guarantee you, and it's difficult when you feel like somebody's coming at you in the moment. You want me to think about doing this when this person is like literally giving me the business right now? Yes. Because when you do, you can hear them giving you the business and you decide you don't want to return the business. You'll be like, okay, thank you. I'll look into that. Like, really? That's how you handling business now? Yeah. How do you do that? Let me tell you about 4-4-6. So it works. It literally slows you down. It is literally mindfulness at work in the midst of conflict resolution. The first place to resolve conflict is within self. That's where, listen, I can't stress this enough. Whatever external conflict that you're experiencing, it's a conflict to you because of an internal conflict. So resolve the internal conflict first. Then you can deal with the external conflict. But if you can't resolve the internal conflict, that internal conflict will now have you be conflicted with the conflict. I'm not joking. I'm not, wordplay, but I'm just saying. So when you become conflicted with the conflict, now you don't deal with it well. You deal with it in such a way that you're gonna be like, man, I wish I could turn back the hands of time. I wouldn't handle it like that.
Are there limits to there's an altercation
Sure.
and someone is trying to calm down, right?
Mm-hmm.
and they, you know, a lot of communication is body language. So we're in a disagreement, and I'm like, you know what? I need to start calming down.
Hmm.
And I'm at a point to where I'm starting to boil, and I'm just doing it. And then now all of a sudden someone else is like, they have an issue with me trying to calm down. Not necessarily, I'm not talking about me, but I've seen it to
Hmm.
where now you got an issue with the way I'm trying to control myself. You know what I mean? And I think that sometimes it escalates, and then people like, look, bro, like, you know what I'm saying? Like, I need to calm down. You know what I'm saying? So like sometimes, like for me, sometimes like not necessarily at home or nothing like this, but I'm in certain areas and that works for me. I may walk around thinking and stuff. So, but sometimes those things can trigger other people while y'all are trying to have that conversation, but that person may have said something that may have triggered you, and now you like, I just need to, you're there and you are physically trying to control yourself. You know what I mean? So I don't know where the question is, but what do you say, to that person who feels some type of way because I'm trying to control myself the best way that I can in that moment? Or is this the point to where we probably need to end the discussion?
Learn to communicate better.
Okay.
Like I'm like as I'm listening to you, the problem isn't, and we'll probably just talk through this without even going through the question.
Mm-hmm.
As I'm listening to you, the problem is not, well, so it is a problem that I'm struggling trying to calm down.
Mm-hmm.
But if I find myself at a point to where I can't calm down, then I need to learn how to communicate to you in a fashion to where you understand we're gonna finish this conversation. But can we finish it later? Because right now I'm not even participating in the conversation. Because and trust me, I understand in certain situations you can't, right? But and an example would be like your boss is standing over your
The
desk yelling,
army.
yeah, stuff like that. And
Yeah.
then sir, ma'am, can you give me about 5 minutes? Can we have this conversation at 2 p.m.? Because I want to give you my undivided attention, but right now I can't. I think getting to the point and learning how to do what is called precision communication helps because it reduces amygdala triggers by avoiding vague and emotionally charged language. Um, and so you'll hear people say, "Well, you never listen." That's a vague statement, right? The fact is, they don't necessarily mean you never listen. Right now, that's what it feels like to them. But there is literally objective examples that day that you listen to that person, but they'll say you never listen. Um, so when stuff like that happens, I think it's important for us to learn how to communicate in the midst of the conflict and ask for a recess, a timeout, or another time to have this discussion. Now, I want to identify the difference because this reminds me of a conversation I had a couple of weeks ago. It's not putting an adult in timeout. I want to make sure I say that. Putting an adult in timeout is like you telling me something, and now that thing has me like wanting to understand it, and so I tell you to give me time so I can process it. That to me is putting an adult in timeout. You came to me to have a conversation with me, but then now I'm putting you on pause because what you're telling me doesn't sit right with me. Well, no, let's stay here and be adults and talk about this because there is no heightened. You see what I'm saying? You don't like it, that's fine. But if you're not, I'm sorry, I don't like it, that's fine. But if you're not approaching me in an aggressive manner, then I don't have conflict with you. I have conflict with what you did. You see what I'm saying? Sure, we can say, well, because you did this thing, I now have conflict with you. No, that's not true. We do that to ourselves all the time. Separate the person from the behavior. Once you learn to separate the person from the behavior, who am I to look at the person and say, you ain't nothing, stuff like that. I'm not the creator, I'm not their creator. So once I separate the person from the behavior, now I can stay in the conversation and I can still talk with the person and we can talk about the behavior, sure, but we still talking. And I think that's totally different from precision communication, because precision communication is where two people who are charged at the same time, and then it's like one says, can we do this again in 10 minutes? Because right now we're not getting anywhere. You're bucking like a bronco, and I'm standing firm like a bull. Neither one of us are getting anywhere. It's a battle of, right now. It's between me and you, bro. It's a battle of testosterone. Battle of testosterone only ends in one way. I don't think neither one of us wanted to go that way. So let's do this again at 3 o'clock. That to me is the difference between precision communication and putting a person in timeout. Because when I put a person in timeout, I might be feeling some type of way, but you're coming to me in a calm manner. Precision communication, we both charged. And hey, let's take a time out and come back and do this after a while.
Yeah, I hate being in timeout, bro. That's it's like one of the worst feelings, bro.
It
And ain't
is.
nothing you can do about it because, like you said, that person is holding moving forward hostage. You know what I mean? We can't move forward until we have the discussion. You
Right.
know, and I've never done it, but I've heard people talking about they haven't talked to their partner like in a week, and I was like, y'all in the same house and y'all don't talk for a week. Like I've never done that, but I've heard that that it's a thing.
It is a thing. I don't so I'm not familiar, and I'm talking experience now. I'm
Mhm.
not familiar with not talking to a person in a week.
Mhm.
However, in the past, I'm familiar with not having relevant conversation with a person in a week, like behind the buys or whatever the case. And
Mm.
I'm talking about living in the same house.
Yeah.
Superficial conversation. Like I've
Mhm.
seen that, I've lived that, but
Yeah.
having relevant conversation that matters, you're not doing that within a time frame of a week. Like that is a thing. Some
Yeah.
people do that because they're still holding on to the thing that they were supposed to have conversated about a couple of
Mhm.
days ago, and they may have said, "Hey, give me some time to process it." And because they're processing it, they go and they think about it, and they're thinking about it, and they're adding these different variables to it. Then they come back to you with the questions about the variables. Like,
Mhm.
no, where did that come from? So yeah,
Mhm.
I've seen that.
Yeah.
That's a very
Yeah.
scary thing. Very
I
scary
get
thing.
that one.
Yeah, time is running along. So I kind of want to give a couple of techniques. Right, we talked about the breathing 446 technique. It's really like it's like a second reboot. It's like doing the, I gotta say it. It's like doing a restart on your computer, if you will, to kind of get everything back operating properly. We talked about precision communication, but then there's a third one called telemetry, right? Um, telemetry, whoever you from, I say telemetry, right? Which is the process of recording and transmitting the readings of an instrument. So, what does that look like? That looks like in the midst of, like, we make the agreement early on, right? Say, hey, when we are at odds, I need for you to tell me what you see when you see me, and then I'll do the same thing for you. So now we have that agreement. So now, in the midst of arguing, whatever the case may be, or discussing or whatever, we don't do it right down. Oh, that's what you do. Write this down. No, don't do that. Right? Just recall what you see and then capture it later. You know what I'm saying? And don't say, well, on December 12th at 10 p.m., don't do that. Like, just give a kind of like, not an, don't analyze it. Just share the observation. I can tell when you get upset because you start stuttering. When you start stuttering, I know it's going to be a long conversation at that point. Be like, really? Yep. So now that person knows that when I stutter, when they hear themselves stutter, that's automatically a trigger now based upon what they heard their partner say for them to scan themselves. That's really what all of this is trying to get you to do, is to scan yourself. So the 446 breathing is really a thing that you do to calm yourself. Precision communication is what you do when you realize that we're not going nowhere, and conflict telemetry helps you to scan yourself. So I just kind of wanted to put that out, um, because ultimately we got to get to the point of regulated expression protocols. Now, um, I do want to share something. Well, I'll tell you what. Let me just do this. Let me just do this first. What psychological benefits do structured, and they don't call them gripe sessions. I had to change the word behind it. And I tell you where it came from. What psychological benefits do structured gripe sessions offer that casual venting lacks, and how do they prevent resentment?
I think that having a structure for most things is 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 a good thing. I think when you going casually and you going willy nilly, like we've all been in those meetings at work, and they've been like, "Hey, we're gonna have conversations about this," or we just having a certain meeting. Someone will bring up one thing, and then all of a sudden, everybody is venting and griping and talking about their complaints and stuff like this, and then it turned to a big old complaint session. And I think so. I think that when you have casual venting, I think that I think that I think one of the things you can do, you can kind of look at it when people are sharing things in the office and you're just venting. You know what I mean? I think what that does, it doesn't, what's the words that I'm trying to use? It has the potential to be a negative thing. Whereas when you have something structured, there's bullet points, there's certain key points that we may want to target and share. Maybe there's a form that sent out you know a needs assessment survey that's sent out periodically or something like that, and people put their gripes on it, right? And
Hmm.
then at a certain time, there is a certain place set up to whereas we can talk about these things, and people in there, and we're talking about conflict resolution and trying to decode some of the conflict. So I think that in those spaces, especially if it's structured right, and the person who's in charge and who's leading or mediating the session, I think a lot more people can get something out of it versus just somebody willy nilly and then turn into a venting, because now they can see their complaint, they can see it being talked through, they can see other and different perspectives and different sides of it, and it's not necessarily about changing anybody's opinion, but then now psychologically, you know what? All right, I got it. At least if I have a complaint, there's a process that's built into this organization where I can go, so I don't have to carry as much weight around. I ain't have to worry about what coach said at work last week. Hey, we got a process. You know
Yep.
what I mean? So psychologically, while I'm at work, I'm not really worried about as many things because I know that there is something in place to help me deal with things. So psychologically, I think that may help me more as an employee.
Yeah, I like that. The Army has a real good one that is taught and used a lot, um, and it is a thing for improvement. And what I would say, well, let me just give what the Army's how the Army uses it. It's a three-part process. It is situation, concern, recommendation. And so you do that, like say for example, we just conducted this exercise. And then after conducting this exercise, like we're getting feedback from everybody. Now this is a little different than a structured gripe session, but this can be considered a gripe session because these are all of the problems that they observed. But here's the best part about it: the problems that they observed and share with me, because they have different viewpoints of it. They are participating in different events to where I wasn't participating. Well, when they turn it all into me, I get several different viewpoints on how to make this thing better. So now they're telling me the situation, they're telling me the concern in that situation, and they're giving me a recommendation to fix it. Psychologically, when a person feels like you or that they are a part of the fixing of a problem, it makes them feel like part of the team. So now, when we look at these structured gripe sessions, if we have everybody in the room and I say, hey, I want to hear everybody's concern, but here's what I want to hear. Don't come to me with a concern that you have not thought enough about to give a solution. I'm not saying that your solution has to be right. I'm not even saying that your solution has to be complete. But think enough into the concern to where you have a solution yourself. Because the solution is the thing that I really want to hear. And from that standpoint, what you will find, I'm telling you, not only will they vent, boy, will they vent, but now I just told you, if you have not thought enough about the thing that you're venting about, don't vent about it, because it may just be how you feel. But now You think into it and you come up with a solution. Maybe we can do this. Okay, great. Now we're fixing the problem. And from a psychological standpoint, what you'll find is I think the team will come together in a more better and more holistic fashion.
And I also think that when it comes to venting, people are not necessarily looking for a response. You know, they're not necessarily looking for a fix. They're just looking to download. Whereas I think when you have a gripe session, or especially structured, people are generally looking for some sort of solution.
Right.
And I think that may be a little bit of difference between the two. Because people come in, they be like, "Oh man, let me tell you this," and they go yada 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 yada. Like they really a lot of times are just being emotional, which is nothing wrong with that. And they're just trying to be expressive because I vent. I
Yeah.
think that venting is good. I think there's a time and place for venting.
Hmm.
But casual venting, especially in the office, can be very damaging. And I think at home, I think it can be a good thing, but I also think it could be damaging at the home too. Like, you know, if you're the one coming home always venting, always have a whole bunch of stuff going on, you know, I think that it's good to have someone to vent to, but I think that we need to make sure that we're being respectful and really understand the relationship we have with the person that we're venting to as well, because
Yeah.
everybody don't want to be vented to. A lot of people got enough stuff on their plate, and they don't always want to be vented to. So
Absolutely, absolutely, and I think this is a good place to bring this to the conversation,
amen.
because the Mercury Seven framework is a conflict resolution strategy inspired by the original NASA Mercury 7 astronauts who pioneered protocols to manage stress and friction in high stakes environments. And the way it works is that structured venting sessions were like the astronauts were mandated weekly 15-minute what they call B sessions. Y'all know what the B stand for, don't act like you don't know. 15-minute B sessions where grievances could be aired without interruptions or any rebuttals. Um, and the notion is that the venting had to be controlled. So there were time parameters set that were designed to prevent resentment from festering and ensured issues were addressed before they escalated. Number two, no personal attacks, right? Criticism was directed at the action or the system, not the individual. Number three, they had to be solutions oriented closure. So after the venting period, the group shifted to collaborative problem solving for actionable fixes. Now, I could not find a model for the Mercury 7 framework. However, I found the McKinsey 7 framework, and the McKinsey 7 framework is used for organizational change, but it literally mirrors a lot of what they were talking about. So it's almost like we talk, say for example, we talk structure, skill set, styles, staff, systems, strategy, but we all had to have shared values in order for that to happen. Like I said, it's easier to do it at work. It's harder to do it in the home set, because if we don't have shared values, then controlled griping sessions, B sessions, if you will, literally become gripes and B's at the same time, because we're not working toward the same goal. And I think that's an important thing for all of us to kind of capture, and like we can do this in the home, we can do this at work, we can do this on the football field, we can do it anywhere. But the thing is that a lot of us don't know these things exist, so we just kind of revert to our more primitive forms of problem solving, which always leads to fisticuffs, right? Um, Last one, and then I
Yeah.
think we can kind of jump into problem solve. Get up into true and false. Repairing trustworthiness systematically. Now, I mean, sounds really good. Sounds really good. But I gotta ask, how does methodically identifying communication glitches versus personal faults rebuild fractured trust?
So are you talking about in myself or you talking about in somebody else?
Yes.
All right. So I can't control anybody else. So I'm gonna make this personal. So how does methodically identifying communication glitches in myself rebuild fractured trust? Like I said, I am only responsible for me. I can't control anybody else. If I can do, if I am constantly working and growing on myself, and I am identifying um, gaps in who I am or things that can make me be better. We're constantly growing, constantly evolving, constantly trying to be better people. So if I can identify some of these things in my communication that is causing issues or causing, maybe me not having certain types of the relationships that I want, if I can identify these things, then I can make adjustments. You know what I mean? I can read some books. Okay. So in my communication glitch, it is, let's say for instance, I am constantly interrupting people while they speak. Right. So maybe what I need to do is I need to go get me a book, watch some podcasts, learn some information on um what I can do to adjust me interrupting people while they're talking, and then maybe even go a little bit deeper. Maybe I hire somebody because maybe it's psychological, maybe it's something that I don't know. Maybe even after reading all these books and watching these podcasts, is something that's still there. You know what I mean? I'm still doing it. So now at some point I need to get to the why. Why are you doing it? And then once I figure out the why, I think that'll help me develop some sort of plan going forward to help rebuild any type of trust, especially in that trust that you have in a relationship. And then now, if you can better communicate with that person or team or whoever it is in that relationship, and the trust has been fractured, I think you may stand a better ability to trying to be able to rekindle or rebuild that relationship.
Yeah, I definitely agree with all of that, and I'm gonna keep my answers simple here. How does methodically identifying communication glitches rebuild fractured trust? Because it shows that I'm trying. It shows that I am putting forth effort. I think a lot of times what we do is we try to hold fast to our communication glitches as opposed to recognizing when someone tells us that we're glitching. We start coming up with different types of excuses. No, if you identified a communication glitch, it's a communication glitch. When you share the fact that you actively observed a communication glitch, then my response should be like, okay, great. Because let's be honest, I can't identify all of them. So when that happens, I have to show that I'm open, I'm hearing, I'm receiving. Now I am observing based upon what you shared with me that you saw. And so in the midst of doing that, now I have a responsibility to do something about it. Like my brother C Squared just said. So, real quick, because we're getting close to our time, we greatly appreciate everybody here. Again, I hope this information is valuable. Again, if you have not hit the like button, go ahead and hit the like button. If you have not shared, it might be a little too late to share, but have them go back and look at the replay because I guarantee you they're going to want to listen to this one over and over again. So, let's get into some true false here. First and foremost, conflict resolution improves when disagreements are treated as impersonal patterns to analyze rather than moral failures.
So everything in me wants to say yes, wants to say true. However, I don't think it's an absolute. So I think that when disagreements are treated as impersonal patterns, I think that it can improve, but I don't say it's a definite. Not saying that it's indefinite, but for the sake of this question, I would say I'm gonna say true.
I want you to expound on that. I want you to share why, and I get what you're saying. I want you to
Hmm.
share with the people when you say that. Why would it not be a definite? Why would me becoming more aware of a thing that I do not necessarily improve conflict resolution?
Because just because I'm aware of something doesn't mean that I'm willing to change. So it's a lot of people who are aware of things. It don't mean that they're changing. So this, I think, that's just one portion of the many things that goes into improving overall conflict resolution.
I totally agree with that question, that statement. I just, man, listen. I don't want to beat a dead horse here, but
Hey,
that was exactly what I was thinking.
mhm.
I'm so glad you said that. Next one.
Guilty, guilty. Sometimes have been guilty.
Next one. True, false. A 4 second inhale, 4 second hold, and 6 second exhale is a proven technique to reset emotional reactivity.
I'm gonna say true. I'm gonna say it is a proven technique. Not the only one, but it's definitely a proven technique. And I know before I even answered all the chat, I already knew that. So
Yeah, they was answering while I was still reading.
yeah, they already knew it.
All right. Number three, true or false. Replacing vague statements with actionable requests. Examples. Let's finalize the budget by Friday. De escalates tension more effectively.
Here we go again. Same thing.
Okay.
Same thing. Replacing vague statements with actionable requests. Um, let's finalize the budget. Found de-escalates tension more effectively. Yeah, I'm gonna go with true.
Okay.
I'm gonna go with true. I'm gonna leave it at that.
I don't disagree with that. But then you have some people's like, well, if they've never were doing the budget and you're trying to bring them into doing the budget and they don't want to, that could be a problem as well. But that's a whole nother
Mhm.
conversation.
Yeah, or some
Um,
people get triggered by why you don't want to do it today.
yeah, like
Hey,
why I gotta do it? You've been doing it the whole
yeah.
time.
Mhm.
All right. That said, scenario time, and I love it. So as we read it, the scenario is rolling across the bottom, and then we'll dive into the question. And I keep the scenario going. A customer service team at a fintech startup is paralyzed by daily clashes between reps over workload distribution. The team lead replaces their traditional mediation meetings with a tension tracker system. Using a shared dashboard, they log recurring friction points, examples, late shifts hands-offs, as system alerts, and then crowdsource solutions. A month later, conflict drops by 70%. And new solutions like automated shift logs are implemented company wide. When asked the secret, the lead says, "We debugged human communication like software code." So, that said, the first question that I have in relation, what strategy involves logging recurring conflicts as objective alerts to remove blame? I ask again, which strategy involves logging recurring conflicts as objective system alerts to remove blame? Is it A, crowdsource polling? Is it B, tension tracking? Is it C, emotional analytics? And is it D, mandated mediation? I'm read them again. A, crowdsource polling. B, tension tracking. C, emotional analytics. And D, mandated mediation. You're muted.
I'm going with B. Bravo.
Okay. B, bravo, it is. Very good. So if you guys,
Hey.
you're all over it. All right. Question number two. Which principle aligns with reframing complaints like "you're always late" into alert overlapping shifts? Again, which principle aligns with reframing complaints like "you're always late" into alert overlapping shifts? Is it A, structured venting frameworks? Is it B, precision communication? Is it C, emotional reset protocol? Is it D, trust autopsies? I say again, is it A, structured venting frameworks? B, precision communication? C, emotional reset protocols? Or D, trust autopsies?
No, it's been a recurring thing. Since you said the B word earlier, I'm gonna go with B again.
All right, B it is, precision
B it
communication.
is.
Wait, I was supposed to take that down. I was supposed to take that one down. All right, last one for the day. Controlled breathing techniques, 446 sequences, primarily target which parts of the brain? And I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna keep reading this slow. So if you want to type it out, go ahead and type it out. Controlled breathing techniques, 446 sequence, primarily target which part of the brain? Is it A, the hippocampus, B, amygdala, C, cerebellum, D, occipital lobe? I say again: A, hippocampus, B, amygdala, C, cerebellum, or D, occipital lobe.
Um, Shout out to the water boy, E, the medulla oblongata.
Wow.
Did I say it right? Medulla oblongata.
You did.
D,
You did say medulla oblongata. You know, I didn't realize all of the answers would be. That's
B.
interesting.
Yeah, it was a B thing today.
It was a B thing
Man,
today.
before I got on, man, there was some bees outside.
I mean, it just kind of goes along with the pollen, man.
Hey, bam.
You know
Ooh,
what I'm
another B word. Bam.
saying? All right. Listen, man, greatly appreciate this.
Yeah,
But
man.
as always, that brings us to this point where we have our actionable advice.
Blow me up. All right, man. My actual advice for this week is this: simply go and do some sort of assessment on yourself. Like, look in the mirror. If anytime you have any type of conflict, if this week, go back and do a very good assessment on it. And if you don't know how to do an assessment, go online and look for one. They have plenty online. Um, Go to chat GTP or something like that. And if you haven't done anything, you haven't got any conflict, I would challenge you to go back and look at um, something in your past that may have been some conflict or something like that, and then go through and kind of debug it or kind of decode that, and see what you pull out of it, and kind of write those things down and maybe look at two or three different more, and just kind of see if you have a pattern or something that goes on in your life, that's causing conflicts that is preventing you from having some of the relationships in your life. And that is my actual advice for the week.
I thank you for that. I greatly appreciate that. I'm gonna say something totally off script that has absolutely nothing to do with what we talked about. Um, but I'm gonna do so by first sharing something because I look at if anybody knows me, they know I look at the Weather Channel every now and then, right? And some people tend to call me the weather man because I try to stay abreast of what's happening in the weather. But weather patterns exist, and over time, we collectively have gotten really good. Not we, as in me. I'm not a weatherman, really. But we have gotten really good at being able to predict the outcome based upon the weather pattern that exists. Well, a very simple pattern is when two fronts meet, it normally becomes a storm. So when a cold front meets a warm front, there are normally storms that happen there. So the funny thing is about a storm is that sure, the storm happens, but the storm produces the rain, and the rain waters the earth, and therefore the water it becomes a part of the growth pattern of the earth. So what am I saying? I'm saying that conflict has a beautiful potential if we work through it. But if we allow conflict to remain conflict and we stay conflicted about conflicts, then we're going to struggle every time we have conflict. So my charge to you is to restructure the way that you view conflict. Don't view conflict as a bad thing. View conflict as opportunity. Because if we manage to get through the conflict in a more manageable way, a way that is beneficial for a pre-decided outcome, then I think both parties, or however many parties exist in a conflict, I think on the backside you have a beautiful opportunity, and that is my actual advice for the day.
Man, those are I like that perspective. You know, um, not seeing conflict as a bad thing, but as an opportunity to pretty much an opportunity to get better.
Yeah,
You know, a lot of times we look at conflict and be like, "Oh man," and we avoid it. But sometimes going through it is the best thing.
yeah.
And going back and see how you come out on the underside and see what you learn from it. So definitely like that perspective. And speaking of perspective, Friday nights, 8 p.m. Empower Perspective Podcast. Check us out there every Friday at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. What you got, brother?
Real quick, man. Well, thank you for the empowering perspective shout out. Make sure that we tap into the Hearts of Men on Friday nights, and should be the Hearts of Women coming up here soon on the third weekend or the third Saturday of every month, and reframing the image of relationships on the fourth Saturday of every month as well. Lastly, check the link, check the notes. The new online store should be up and running, and yeah, you got some of everything in there. You name it, not just swag, but some of everything in there. Trying to turn in, trying to I'm trying to take people from the TikTok shop, man. Y'all leave that stuff alone. Come on, chop it.
Yeah.
You know what I'm
Talking
saying?
about
That's all I got,
swag,
man. Get some swag.
swagalicious.
Get some swag. All right, man. Listen, on behalf of myself, the mindset coach, and my good friend, the consistency coach, as always, it's an honor to be able to share in conversation with you guys. And listen, continue to let the best version of yourself be a blessing to somebody else. We will see you guys again next week. We are